What's going on YouTube? It's DH back again with another video, and today we're coming back with the regrade followed by the redraft series we've been doing throughout the offseason. Today we take a look at the 2020 NFL draft. This is a fun one to examine. There's some things that changed pretty drastically, and there's some things that have aged really well out of this draft. So excited to revisit the 2020 draft with you. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who ultimately went too high? Who ultimately was one of the biggest steals and fell too low in this draft class? And who's your favorite team? And what do you think about the 2020 draft class as we look back to it? Today we're regrading. Tomorrow we're redrafting this draft class, so be sure to come back to the channel for tomorrow's 2020 redraft. Some things will stay the same, some things will look drastically different. Also want to shout out our sponsor today, BetUS. All their sign-up links and details are down below in the description. You guys get the premise of today's video. Let's jump right into it. Beginning with the Arizona Cardinals, and I was super excited about Isaiah Simmons, and I was like, man, he's just this kind of modern day linebacker safety hybrid. Man, he's going to steal the he's going to take the league by storm. Yeah, not quite. I mean, he's not been bad, and he's starting to get a little bit better. It feels like the Cardinals are figuring out that position, and really the league as a whole is kind of figuring out this, nickel corner safety hybrid. Can they play a little linebacker? All that sort of stuff. And then Josh Jones has proven to be a solid left tackle. Struggled a little bit at right guard and right tackle, but when he's played left tackle specifically last year, he was actually okay. So interesting to see how him and Paris Johnson Jr. kind of settle this tackle situation long term in Arizona. And unfortunately, Benjamin's like the only other name worth like really mentioning here for doing anything to reduce for the Cardinals. So I'm going to go C-. There's still some upside with Isaiah Simmons, so TBD. Last year, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. This could be a prove-it year for him, and maybe he improves his grade single-handedly. Josh Jones, too, I'm interested to see where he fits in the mix with Paris Johnson Jr. So C-, not good, not great, and still some upside to be figured out there in Arizona. Falcons, A.J. Terrell, coming off a down year, but I still think he's one of the best up-and-coming corners in football. Marlon Davidson's not a Falcon anymore. Matt Hennessy still plays on the interior. That's not bad. Michael Walker, shown some promise, but hasn't been anything too crazy. A.J. Terrell definitely is the lion's share of this grade. I'll go C+. Like, Hennessy's not terrible. Michael Walker, moments, but nothing more than that. C+, and a lot of that, again, is A.J. Terrell, because I do think he has the potential to be a shutdown number one corner, but we've had 1 year where it looks really good, 1 year not so much, so we've got to see what he does here in 2023/24. Baltimore Ravens, Patrick Queen is essentially replaced after they take Trenton Simpson. Does feel like they are trying to part ways with him. J.A. Dobbins is a really nice player. Madubuike is no longer, or actually I do believe he is still a Raven, but hasn't been uber productive. Devin Duvernay's a nice little gadget player. Malik Harrison's another linebacker that doesn't really fit into the mix now. Tyree Phillips, fine. Ben Breedson, one of those two offensive linemen I thought maybe could be a starter long term. But yeah, this is kind of a rare miss here from Baltimore. Even as you go down a little bit lower, James Prochet, Geno Stone, nothing really crazy there for Baltimore. So yeah, man, there's really not a whole lot to like here. Duvernay is fine. Dobbins is solid. C-. There's a couple of okay contributors, really Dobbins, but he's missed a lot of time. You could even say D+ here, and I wouldn't think you're crazy, but I'll go with the C- for Baltimore in their 2020 draft class. Next up, Buffalo Bills, A.J. Epineza, one of these edge rushers that we would kind of waiting to see if he can find another gear, and it hasn't so far. Zach Moss kind of played his way out of that running back rotation, at least in a large way. Gabe Davis is, fine. I like him more as a receiver 3 than a receiver 2, which they currently have. Tyler Bass is actually a nice hit here. Dane Jackson played a little bit last year. Wasn't great, but considering the circumstances Buffalo was in for a 7th rounder to step in and play some okay football, just kind of keep the, hold the fort down, so to speak. It wasn't terrible. And then Isaiah Hodgins doesn't play for the Bills anymore, but he's kind of emerged as an okay player. Can't give that, credit to the Bills, though. So yeah, it's kind of, Epineza, who's been disappointing, Davis, who's solid, Bass is, pretty good kicker, fine, and then Jackson was an okay spot starter. I'll go with a C flat. Nothing that really wows me. Some okay contributors. Bass is probably the most impactful guy here, actually. They get him in the 6th round, which isn't horrible. So yeah, I'll give Buffalo a C here. All right, next up, the Carolina Panthers. Derek Brown's coming off the best year of his career, so this is definitely a upward trajectory type of draft class. Your Turco Matos, kind of like Epineza, just hasn't really worked out. Similar profiles, but neither one has really taken a huge step forward in the right direction. Jeremy Chin's a nice player. More intrigued by him than saying that he's been uber productive and been a great player so far. It's more so he has an interesting play style, interesting body type, good athleticism, and this nickel, slot corner hybrid. He fits that, kind of new age position in the NFL. So he's a fun player. And then, yeah, ultimately, Troy Bright Jr. is, he's okay. But a lot of this is Derek Brown plus Jeremy Chin. I'll go with B flat because I mean, Brown's coming off a really good year, and I think that potential is there for Jeremy Chin. And you could even say your Tier Gross Matos. Maybe B minus is more fair, but I'll give Carolina the flat B mainly because of Brown and Chin. Next, we get the Chicago Bears. Cole Kmet's actually a player I think is still good. He just hasn't had a whole lot of opportunities to produce. He was kind of sitting behind Jimmy Graham the last few years in Chicago, and then Justin Fields is still kind of going through some growing pains as a passer, so that's limited Kmet a little bit. Jalen Johnson was actually a corner I thought should have gone in the first round. Where Jeff Gladney went to Minnesota, I was pounding the table that should be Jalen Johnson. Ultimately, we'll talk about Gladney later. Travis Gibson is someone who still has some upside. He'll get some playing time on the edge this year. Kendall Vildor, I guess, has been he's been a starter for this team, and I don't really know how good, but he has been a starter, so there's some production. And then Darnell Mooney, that's the big hit of this one. He has been the most productive. He will still probably have the largest role of any of these players. Him and Jalen Johnson, if he stays healthy. Johnson could be CB1. Mooney is going to be a solid wide receiver 2 behind DJ Moore. So yeah, not a bad class whatsoever. I'll go with B plus because again, I like Johnson, I like Mooney, and I like Kmet, and then you still have some upside there with Gibson. So a lot of good hits there towards the top of their draft. B plus for Chicago. Cincinnati Bengals, this is going to be an A just off the first 2 picks alone. Future franchise quarterback, future wide receiver 2 that easily could be a wide receiver 1 for like 2/3 of the league. So yeah, that's an A. And then Logan Wilson, who has emerged as one of the best off-ball linebackers in football. I'm not saying he's Fred Warner, but one of the better ones at least, somewhere in that top 10 to 15-ish range. And Akeem Davis-Gaither has also been a productive player for them too. So, and we've had to see Akeem Adeniji. I don't know how good that is necessarily, but for a 6th-rounder, he's patched in played football for them, which is more than most 6th-rounders can say. So, yeah, this is an A for Burrow and Higgins, but then you throw in Logan Wilson and Davis-Gaither. Yeah, it's got to be an A for Cincinnati. Cleveland, Jedrick Wills hasn't really worked out as well as a lot of the other tackles from this class, but he's still okay. And he's going into year 4. Sometimes he's a late, kind of a late bloom for an offensive tackle. Maybe Wills is one of those players. Grant Delpit feels like a player who should be better than what we've seen so far. Freaky athletic, and showed a lot of that at LSU. And it just has not really panned out at the NFL level. But I'm holding out hope that Delpit does figure it out. Elliott's been a bit of a miss, though that did feel like a really awesome fit. Harrison Bryant's been an okay backup tight end. Donovan Peoples-Jones has produced, has done something for them. And as a 6th-rounder, that's not terrible. But he is a player I think they are looking to replace, given they drafted Cedric Tillman in the 3rd round this year. So I already think they know they can do better. But for a 6th-rounder, you have to give them some credit there. So I'll go with the C+, right? They drafted 2 starters, one in the 1st round, one in the 6th round. Not often you get that. Upside still to be had with Delpit, and Harrison Bryant's an okay tight end option to have on the roster. Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this is going to be an A just for the first 2 picks alone. Superstar, wide receiver, star to superstar, depending on where you draw that line, cornerback, who fits that defense really, really well. On top of that, Tyler Biadasz. You get him in the 5th round. I mean, I think they get better at center, but again, to draft a guy on day 3 that becomes a multi-year starter at an integral position for a unit in the Dallas Cowboys offensive line that more often than not is one of the things we think of as a strength in Dallas versus a weakness. So got to give him some flowers there. And Neville Gallimore's played, but Osa Odigizua has played better than him. So he's really nothing to write about. But Lamb, Diggs, Biadasz, yeah, got to give Dallas an A here. They drafted a superstar, a star, and a starter. Not many drafts get to say that. Denver Broncos, the next team we talk about. Jerry Jeudy, man, I was in love with Jerry Jeudy as a prospect. My wide receiver 1 in this year's draft, or this 2020 draft class. And I was like, dude, this guy's a route runner. There's no corners going to check him. And I still think the route running has actually been showcased. Man, just got some bad drop problems, and injuries have also been an issue as well. KJ Hamler battled injuries, kind of a gadget player. He just had a lot of bumps along the way because when he was healthy, he also had like Russell Wilson last year. So, it's just been one bad break after another for KJ Hamler. Michael Ojemudia, I thought, could potentially be an okay corner, but they've kind of already turned the page on him. So I think a player that maybe could go elsewhere, get another shot, but seems as though Denver has seen enough. Lloyd Cushenberry hasn't really worked out at center. Could see him get benched by midway point this season. Albert Ogbonibonam's no longer a Bronco, but it's a fun name to say, so we say it. And yeah, really nothing else to talk about here for the Denver Broncos. So it's a draft that on paper, like if I were to go back and look at my grades from this, I have a hard time thinking I didn't give it an A, especially considering Jeudy fell to them at 15 when it felt like he was going to be wide receiver 1 off the board, potentially to Vegas. So this is such a tough one. I'll go with C-. Still some upside with Jeudy. Don't know what Hamler is quite yet. Lloyd Cushenberry could break out, and at least you got something for Ogbonibonam because he's no longer on the roster. So C-, but you could easily just convince me this should be a D+. But again, I'm still on the optimistic side for those wide receivers. Lions. This is another one of those draft classes I probably gave an A at the time, but Jeff Okudah not on the roster anymore. DeAndre Swift not on the roster anymore. Julian Okwara is like a third pass rusher in the mix. Jonah Jackson coming off a Pro Bowl, but Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowler last year. Jonah Jackson, though, I think is actually a solid guard, especially in run blocking situations. So he's a good player. I'm not going to take that one away from them. Quintez Cephas has had to see the field, hasn't been anything special. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's kind of Jonah Jackson and Julian Okwara, and then the assets you got back from Okudah and Swift and trades. So yeah, I hate to do this, but I think I got to go D+ to C-. I'll go C- just because they at least did part ways with Okudah and Swift early enough to get some assets back. I'll give them the nudge there, C-. Jackson's a good player, but yeah, rotational guy and kind of a decent enough starter. Yeah, not ideal. Not what I thought this draft class was going to turn into for Detroit. Green Bay Packers, this is probably the toughest one to grade because we just haven't seen enough of Jordan Love, and that's obviously the pick that the most weight is going to be, kind of put into. So a little bit of a TBD for Love. Dylan's been a good player. Josiah Deguara, they're still kind of looking for tight ends. Just drafted 2 tight ends, so he's kind of played out of the mix. John Runyon has played for them, been an okay starter. And then Jake Hansen, haven't gotten to see him, but he's a guy, someone that I didn't hate the value they got with him as a 6th rounder. Not a whole lot more to talk about. So this is a really tough one to grade. I'll go with a C flat because Dylan's a pretty good player. Runyon's fine. And then we'll have to wait and see on Love. But C, just so that way I don't have to pick one side or the other. I am excited to see Jordan Love this year, though. Then we get to the Houston Texans. Ross Blacklock is no longer a Texan. Jonathan Grenard is still there, but has yet to break out. Isaiah Coulter, I kind of like the value they got with him in the 5th round. But again, hasn't really been anybody who's wowed. So I got to go, I don't know, D- here. I mean, this just has not... I don't like giving out Fs because technically every draft class should make your roster a little better. But I'll go D-. Again, Blacklock, their first pick, doesn't even play for them anymore. So that's just a tough scene there for Houston. You know what? I'm being a little mean. I'll go D flat. They didn't have a first rounder. So I'll give them a little bit of a break. Let's go D flat for Houston. Then we get to Indianapolis, and this is one of the best draft classes of this year's class, which is funny because we're also coming off another draft class in which Indianapolis Colts shine. Michael Pittman to get him to the top of the 2nd round, thought that was a great place for him to go. And I always kind of thought of him more as a 1B, but he has kind of served as a 1A for the time being for Indy. But I really do wonder what a Colts offense would look like if he was kind of the T. Higgins to someone else as like the alpha number 1 guy. Maybe we'll get to see that at a point in his career. Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs in football, probably in my opinion somewhere in that top 3 mix. Julian Blackmon, when he's healthy, I think is a really good player. And with the retirement of Khari Willis, that he became a really important player in the mix there. Eason, don't worry about that. And Isaiah Rodgers is actually the other name really worth mentioning here. Cornerback from UMass. Nobody really saw this one coming, but he's earned the opportunity to be a starting outside corner this year because he played so well in 22-23. So, this has got to be an A for Pittman, Taylor, and Blackmon. But then you throw in Rodgers as well. You get 2 starters in the secondary, plus level wide receiver, one of the game's best running backs in the 2nd round. Yeah, definitely one of the standout draft classes in A for Indianapolis. Jacksonville, another one that, those first 3 players in specific, I was like, CJ Henderson, I wasn't crazy about, but okay, yeah, they're addressing corner. That's super exciting. Let's see how this fits. Caleb Von Chason, he's kind of this sneaky, uber athletic. I think he'll break out, look better at the NFL level. Yikes. And then Laviska Shenault was one of my favorite players in the class. Just thought he was a better route runner than what he turned out to be. Really good gadget upside, great with the ball in his hands, and he's kind of developed into gadget player only and doesn't even play for the Jags anymore. So that's tough. Devon Hamilton, Ben Barch kind of saved the grade here because they both start right now. Barch, I think they can do better than, but he is slated to be the starting left guard as of this moment for Jacksonville. So I'll go C- because they got a couple of okay guys out of it. Where Henderson doesn't play there either, but at least they moved on from that early on enough. And then maybe Caleb Von Chason does have some crazy breakout. I'm not anticipating it. I'll go C-. Couple of okay starters at lower position values in the mid-rounds. That's an okay spot for that. But they missed on those top 3 picks. And this was a class that I probably graded an A when it first happened. And am I an idiot for that? Kansas City. It's not Clyde Edwards-Helaire and it's not Lucas Niang, the picks that kind of excited me initially. But Willie Gay Jr., solid player, and he's kind of the coverage linebacker to Nick Bolton as the blitzer, kind of thumper. And then L'Jarius Sneed, one of the better values of this class. And a little spoiler alert for tomorrow, he sneaks into the first round because I think he's one of the best 32 players to come out of this draft class. And, nickel corner, add the body of an outside corner. They kind of play him sometimes at safety too. He's an interesting player, and he's kind of a Spagnuolo fit. So don't know if he'd be this good if he played for anybody else, but for Spagnuolo, he's been a damn good player and one of the best players in that secondary, during the Tyrann Mathieu era and even beyond it now. Maybe is the best player in that secondary. We'll see about Trent McDuffie this year, of course, too. But I'll go C flat. Snead and Gay definitely save the grade. CEH has been outplayed by a lot of other running backs. Niang has had a hard time seeing the field, and there's really not much else to talk about. So C, maybe C plus, depending on how good you think Snead is. But yeah, I'll go with the C here for Kansas City. Raiders, Henry Ruggs, obviously that's starting out on a rough note, but oh wait, Damon Arnett not on the roster anymore. Lynn Bowden Jr. was traded like the next day. Brian Edwards not on the roster anymore. Yikes. And then Amik Robertson, who has not been good. Yeah, sorry. I hate giving out Fs, but yeah, Vegas, you're getting an F. When your first 3 picks don't play on the roster anymore, and one of those first 3 picks was traded like the next day, that's not good. And I mean, I liked Mike Mayock, and I thought John Gruden would make for a good head coach. I was excited about where the Raiders were going, but this is one of those draft classes that, I was excited at first because of Ruggs specifically, but everything after that was kind of meh. And this was kind of the indicator of things to come for the Mayock and Gruden regime there in Vegas. Chargers, this one's tricky because Justin Herbert, right? Like, wow, awesome. And he was even better than we anticipated. He was QB3, should have been QB2, and I won't give away where he goes in tomorrow's redraft, but it's early. So, I mean, that's a big hit there for the Chargers, but Kenneth Murray, not really a great scheme fit, especially for Brandon Staley. Hasn't looked great. Joseph Kelly, he's been fine. Joe Reed, nothing spectacular. Louis Gilman, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so he's fun for me, but slated to be a starter. Do I think they could do better there? I do. So we'll see what Gilman looks like this year alongside Derwin James, KJ Hill. Nothing really to talk about there. So I'll go A- just because Justin Herbert, I did my quarterback rankings as a top 4 quarterback, but he is 98% of the way to this grade. And then Gilman, I'm kind of interested to see what he looks like as a starter this year. So A- based on the production and the hit that is Justin Herbert. Rams, Cam Akers, he's been fine, I guess. He's had some moments, had some games, had some stretches. Van Jefferson, I think, is an okay depth wide receiver. Terrell Lewis, Terrell Burgess, I was excited about both those picks. Neither one's looked great. Jordan Fuller's been a good player, coming off a little bit of a down year, though. But, I mean, a lot of that same could be said about the entire Rams roster. So there's a couple of okay pieces here. I'll go with a C because, Jefferson's solid. Akers, good enough. Fuller's been pretty productive, but a lot of misses as well for the Rams. Also doing it without a first-round pick. So let's give Los Angeles a C. Miami, and this is a little trickier because, Justin Herbert's he could be the lion's share of the grade, but he's great. Tua, if he's the lion's share of the grade here, it's he's kind of Jimmy Garoppolo, but left-handed and younger, and also battles a ton of injuries and concussion injuries in specific, which are kind of tricky to deal with, and they linger. So this one's a little harder for me to grade. Austin Jackson, I think there's some hope that he kind of figures it out this year. Hasn't been good so far. Noah Igbenogany, I was excited about this pick. Thought it'd be fun with Byron Jones and Xavier Howard there, but hasn't really worked out. Robert Hunt's actually one of the better players of this draft class. Brandon Jones, Raekwon Davis has been kind of forgettable. Solomon Kinley, I thought, could eventually become a starter. He has not. So, yeah, it's Tua, it's Robert Hunt, and, maybe the upside of Austin Jackson. So you got the quarterback, and, that offense is perfect for Tua. So at this present moment, I'll go with a B because I do think that Mike McDaniel has the perfect quarterback for that offense. And Robert Hunt, was actually emerged as a solid starter, and he's played both tackle and guard, so I respect that. The quarterback being the most important part of the mix here. So I'll go B, but yeah, this could have been a draft that was way, way better considering they had 3 picks in the top 30. Minnesota Vikings. I mean, Justin Jefferson, we're already starting in A territory. I mean, that was obviously a huge hit. And I was really hoping he would go there. The Eagles picked Jalen Reagor right before that. So the Vikings celebrated, and in retrospect, Eagles fans across the country dropped their heads into their hands. Jeff Gladney, though, that was a miss. Again, I was really liking the idea of Jalen Johnson as a fit for that defense. They go elsewhere. Gladney didn't work out. Cleveland, solid run blocker, I should say. Not as good as pass protector, which is interesting for this tackle converted to play guard. Cam Dantzler not on the team anymore. DJ Wonnum, been fine. He's had some okay moments. Been a decent depth player for them. KJ Osborne right now slated to be wide receiver 3, and he's been relatively productive. So they got 2 of their top 3 wide receivers out of this draft class, plus Ezra Cleveland, who's been a starter, DJ Wonnum, who's been okay. I'll go A-. But this is because of Justin Jefferson. Like A- with some okay things down the line, but Justin Jefferson is one of the best wide receivers in football. Right now, I'll call him my wide receiver 2. I haven't really finalized that. That's why I haven't done a wide receiver rankings just yet, but he's somewhere there in the top 3. All right, next up, the New England Patriots. Kyle Duggar was a player I liked a ton coming out of Lenoir-Rhyne, small school guy, but he just was a ball player, simply put. And I think he's kind of, with time, really starting to hit his stride with New England. Josh Uche's become one of the best pass rush defensive ends, outside linebackers you could possibly have. Anthony Jennings is okay. The 2 tight ends didn't really work out. And Michael Onwenu played guard, he's played tackle, he's really flexible. And he's been a good player at a lot of those different spots. So Onwenu plus Duggar and Uche, I'll go with a B+. I think this was a solid class. Now, granted, it's at safety, linebacker, and then more often than not, interior offensive line. So low position values, but those are still 3 really solid starters for the Patriots today. New Orleans Saints. Cesar Ruiz doesn't have his 5th-year option pickup. Zach Bonds played less than 400 snaps in his NFL career. Adam Troutman excited me, but he didn't work out. And then you have Tommy Stevens, who the Saints draft a quarterback every year. Tommy Stevens is forgettable in this equation. I'll go with a D+, maybe C- because of Ruiz, but Ruiz hasn't really even played that well. So he's been a starter, but he hasn't necessarily been a high-end starter. So D+ for New Orleans also hurts when you only have a 4-player class, right? Giants, Andrew Thomas with some time has emerged as one of the best tackles in football. Xavier McKinney, one of my favorite safeties in the league. Matt Pert, not a part of the equation anymore. Darnay Holmes could be their starting slot this year. Shane Lemieux had opportunities to win the inside spot at guard. Tay Crowder actually had some starting opportunities at linebacker as well. But Thomas, one of the best tackles in football. Kinney, one of the better safeties in football. I'll go B+ here for the Giants. Not a whole lot else down the rest of the way until I get to see more Darnay Holmes, if he does get to start the nickel this year. But those top 2 picks definitely carry a lot of the weight here. And Thomas, again, on the upswing there for the Giants, which that was the most important pick they could hit in this draft class. Then we get to the Jets. Mekhi Becton, a huge TBD because when we got to see him, he's been a really good player, but we just haven't seen a whole lot of him. And the injuries, is that going to continue to linger? Is he now in shape? Is that now not an issue? Let's wait and see there. Denzel Mims, not on the team anymore. Ashton Davis, not a part of the rotation. Bryce Hall was a player I thought they actually got really good value with, but no longer needed. So, yeah, this is actually a kind of a rough draft class. I'm going to go C- because I like Hall, and then Becton has some upside, but I'm kind of hedging my bets saying that I think Becton can finally prove it this year, and I'm kind of leaning in that direction. If he doesn't, then this is D+-ish here for the Jets. So a little bit of a TBD because of Becton, but I'll go C- for the time being. Philadelphia Eagles, man, if not for the Jalen Hurts pick, where would this draft class be? Kevon Wallace has actually been an okay safety when he's seen the field. Jalen Reagor's obviously not an Eagle anymore. Jack Driscoll probably not going to see the field. They've been doing a good job rotating in and continuously drafting guys who eventually become starters, like a Cam Jurgens from last year's draft. And then Quez Watkins, the other big hit here. He actually became what Jalen Reagor was supposed to be. They just did in the 6th round, shades of Kirk Cousins replacing Robert Griffin III, another team in the NFC East actually. So Hurts, Watkins are really. And then Wallace. Those are the 3 players to take into account here. I'll go with an A because Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. If everybody got a chance to do that over again, he'd go a whole lot higher. And again, come back for tomorrow's redraft, he goes a lot earlier than pick 53 because we're not doing 53 picks in tomorrow's video. But you get my point. He is one of the first players taken off the board. Pittsburgh, Chase Claypool. This got really exciting to start, and then ultimately he just kind of proved not to be a fit. So that's tough. Alex Highsmith coming off a year with 15 sacks, using PFF charting data. Really emerged and become a really nice number 2 edge rusher and a great replacement for Bud Dupree. Anthony McFarland, Kevin Dotson lost an opportunity to become a starter. Antoine Brooks Jr. I thought we'd see more of, maybe now in the nickel with them cutting Arthur Millette, but for the time being, haven't gotten to see him. This is kind of Alex Highsmith and no one else, so I'll go with a C flat. Maybe a C+ you can sell me on that because Chase Claypool became Joey Porter Jr. because Claypool was traded for the first pick of the 2nd round in Chicago, and then became Joey Porter Jr., so I'm excited about that. But that's not really how this should be playing out. So I'll go with a C because they hit on Highsmith, but everything else is looking like a miss right now. San Francisco 49ers, Kenton Law not great. You've been good, but he's a player that I just can't see how they give him an extension because you're paying Debo, you're paying Christian McCaffrey, you're paying Trent Williams, you're paying Nick Bosa, you're paying Fred Warner, you're paying Charvarius Ward. There's so much money already spent on that roster that I just can't see them keeping Ayuk around. And he does feel like a player who is more replaceable than others on that roster, at least once you start getting into high-level starter status. But Ayuk's been a really good player. Jawan Jennings might ultimately be that guy. They just re-sign for a cheap contract and ask him to do a lot of those same things. Jennings, I think, is actually a pretty solid player. So TBD on Kinlaw. I think this could be the year, but he's also behind Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. Good news, Armstead can play edge opposite of Nick Bosa. So there's still a pathway for Kinlaw to see the field if he does break out. I'll go with the C-flat. A lot of this is Ayuk. I like Jennings. Upside for Kinlaw, but I'll go C-flat because to this point, Ayuk's really the only one who's produced. Seattle Seahawks. I think Jordan Brooks has been a little bit better than I think a lot of people want to give him credit for. He was a surprising pick at 27, but he hasn't been as bad as I think the pick. Like if you were to weigh how surprising that pick was versus how quote-unquote bad Brooks has been, the pick was more surprising than Brooks has been bad. He has been an okay linebacker. Again, it's just like, oh, well, you took him in the first round and nobody saw him as a first rounder. Well, that's that. You evaluate that, and then now you look at him as a player. I think he's been an okay player, and I think a lot of people want to crap on him just because he was a first rounder when a lot of people didn't perceive of him that way. Anyways, Darrell Taylor, someone I'm not really crazy about. Damian Lewis has been a solid, solid may not be the right word, but he has been a starter. He has gotten to see the field a lot, and even more opportunities now this upcoming season. DJ Dallas has had to do some fill-in work, been an okay special teamer. Freddie Swain, yep, we've gotten to see him specifically on special teams as well. So, this is not a great draft class. Like, again, I'm hyping up Jordan Brooks and everything. I think he'll definitely be better playing alongside Bobby Wagner. It kind of happens wherever Bobby Wagner goes. C-. Darrell Taylor still has the potential to break out. He has not been a player that's impressed me all that much. Lewis is a starter. I'll go C- for Seattle. Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr. Hard not to give it an A because of those two. We're talking about one of the best tackles in football, one of the best safeties in football. That's awesome. And then the rest of the way isn't really anything too crazy. Keyshawn Vaughn, I actually thought was someone who could potentially be a really nice player next to, Leonard Fournette and become kind of what Rachaad White is figuring to be in that backfield right now. Tyler Johnson, some speed, but, really wasn't anything more than just kind of a, hey, let me show you some over-the-top speed type of guy. But I'll give it an A-. Wirfs, Winfield, awesome hits. Everything else the rest of the way, kind of disappointing. But A-. Don't be upset if you're a Tampa fan. Titans, Isaiah Wilson in retrospect might be the worst pick in the first round that I've watched. Yikes, didn't last in the league all that long, and Tennessee definitely wants that one back. I actually think Christian Fulton's a pretty good player and should have gone earlier than pick 61. Now, granted, he is coming off a not great season, but I do think he can get back to where he was 2 years ago and prove to be a really solid value. Darrington Evans, they're always drafting running backs, so I think Hassan Haskins 2 years ago, Tajay Spears this past draft. I think the Titans have already kind of replaced Evans. And then, Cole McDonald, Chris Jackson, some, shots in the dark there on day 3, yada, yada, yada. So it's kind of Christian Fulton and no one else. As much as I do like Fulton, I got to go D+, because he himself is coming off a rough year, or not great year, I'll say. So I got to go with the D+ here for Tennessee. And I know they want that Isaiah Wilson pick back. Last team to talk about, the Washington Commanders, and we'll go ahead and scroll and get that team name out of here, just in case YouTube wants to smite me. Chase Young, a little bit of a TBD because he missed so much time last year and got hurt at the end of his second year. The talent's there. Feels like he wins a lot with an inside counter. I want to see his special, awesome athleticism blend with power. Like, I want to see the guy that felt like the next coming of Nick and Joey Bosa. Like, I want to see this next, Myles Garrett prospect that Young kind of was perceived as. Right now, he feels like a guy who only has confidence winning in one way, and I want to see him break that. Antonio Gibson, he's not the headline back. Feels like Brian Robinson's taking that from him, but as a nice receiving option off of it, he's a good player. Antonio Gandy-Golden was interesting, but Gandy-Golden's not a part of that wide receiver room, so, can't create that too high. Khalil Hudson I actually thought was a good value. Maybe this is his breakout year with Holcomb gone, but it hasn't gotten a chance to earn that opportunity or really showcase what he could do, maybe. And then Cam Curl, one of the best value picks of the draft. I mean, gets taken in the 7th round, and spoiler alert for tomorrow, he's going to be in that first round, redraft. So, yeah, definitely one of the best value picks here. I'm going to go B flat. Curl's an absolute steal. Young, it's just so tough because I think that there's still a special player in his body, but when a team doesn't pick up his 5th-year option when he's the number 2 overall pick, I think that speaks volumes, right? So I'll go with a B. With maybe the argument you can sell me on is B+ because of the upside of Young. I get that. Gibson's a solid player too. So I'll give Washington a B. But that is going to do it for my 2020 NFL Draft regrade. Let me know what you think down below. What grades do I have right? Which ones do I have wrong? Who's your favorite team? And what do you think about the 2020 draft class they had in retrospect? Love to hear all your thoughts on this draft down below in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Be sure to hit that like button if you did, and subscribe subscribe if you're new to the channel. And just to watch this point of the video, you're the man. And thank you so much. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, my name is Teej, and I am signing off.